the building has been blown away.
Quickly, CNN joins affiliate in Oklahoma City, KFOR, to bring you the latest that they're having live updates on this explosion that's happened at the federal court building in downtown Oklahoma City.
We are a block from where the blast occurred, and they are just treating people here on the side of the road about a block away.
We have heard reports that there is a daycare center in that building. We're looking at video of some of the victims.
We understand now that we are seeing some pictures of the arrival of some of the children who were in the daycare center located in that building.
The people that I talked to say they survived by diving underneath their desks.
When you see pictures of what is left of the federal building, it's hard to believe anybody is walking away from this explosion today.
It sounded like just one big boom, really loud. Then there was so much noise from everything falling in, though, you couldn't hear anything else.
Everything started going like this, and I dove under the desk, and then all the glass came in and the ceilings came down, and I probably got cut worse if I hadn't been under the desk. I just got little scrapes and scratches.
Just the whole back of the building just fell in on us. It's just, it was a big force. Just all fell in. Everyone along our set of offices had back injuries, head injuries, neck, bleeding, glass.
The bombing in Oklahoma City was an attack on innocent children and defenseless citizens. It was an act of cowardice, and it was evil. The United States will not tolerate it.
It looks like it's a video from Beirut or something. You can see the wrought iron bars that are used for reinforcement, the rebar just sticking out there.
We have a parking lot across the street from the federal building, and the cars over there were demolished.
And that is a ladder truck from the Oklahoma City Fire Department. It looks like trying to rescue or at least looking for victims inside the Alfred P Murrah building.
We are now getting word from the Oklahoma City Fire Department that there are people trapped inside the building. They believe they are alive. They are trapped in the rubble.
We're talking to victims through void spaces. People are crying out to us. We're reassuring them the best we can. We're able to reach through cracks and hold people's hands and reassure them as best we can, but getting to them is going to take a long time.
The debris is gone and the building is no more. Now this is a place of peace and remembrance and life.
April 19th, 1995 started out as an idyllic spring morning. Clear skies, calm winds, better than most Wednesdays during the state's unusually turbulent weather season. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Workers showed up to do their jobs, and people went about their regular routines. Then, at precisely 2 a.m., a bomb exploded in front of the Alfred P Murrah Federal Building. In seconds, the area looked like a battlefield. A third of the building was gone, multiple cars were destroyed, and close to 300 nearby buildings were damaged. This was the Oklahoma City bombing by Timothy Mcvey. The human toll of the blast was 168 people lost, 19 of them children, and several hundred more wounded. Addressing the nation that evening, President Bill Clinton described the attack as an act of cowardice. He vowed the federal government would find the terrorists and that justice will be swift, certain, and severe. Clinton deployed a crisis management team, led by the FBI, to Oklahoma City to solve the crime. He declared a state of emergency in Oklahoma City and called for stepped-up precautions to protect other federal facilities.
The bombing in Oklahoma City was an attack on innocent children and defenseless citizens. It was an act of cowardice, and it was evil. The United States will not tolerate it, and I will not allow the people of this country to be intimidated by evil cowards. I have met with our team, which we assembled to deal with this bombing, and I have determined to take the following steps to assure the strongest response to this situation. First, I have deployed a crisis management team under the leadership of the FBI, working with the Department of Justice, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, military and local authorities. We are sending the world's finest investigators to solve these murders. Second, I have declared an emergency in Oklahoma City. And at my direction, James Lee Witt, the director of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, is now on his way there to make sure we do everything we can to help the people of Oklahoma deal with the tragedy. Third, we are taking every precaution to reassure and to protect people who work in or live near other federal facilities. Let there be no room for doubt. We will find the people who did this. When we do, justice will be swift, certain, and severe. These people are killers, and they must be treated like killers. Finally, let me say that I ask all Americans tonight to pray for the people who have lost their lives, to pray for the families and the friends of the dead and the wounded, to pray for the people of Oklahoma City. May God's grace be with them. Meanwhile, we will be about our work. Thank you.
On April 20th, a rear axle from a Ryder truck was located, which yielded a VIN number that was traced back to a body shop in Junction City, Kansas. With the help of the shop employees, the FBI put together a sketch of the man who rented the van, and the manhunt for the bomber was underway. After circulating the picture around the area, the FBI was supplied with the name of the man responsible. A call to the FBI's Criminal Justice Information Service Division of West Virginia yielded information that Mcvey was already in jail. He had been pulled over 80 miles north of Oklahoma City by a patrol officer that noticed a missing license plate on his vehicle. Mcvey had had a concealed weapon upon him and was swiftly arrested. This was just 90 minutes after the bombing.
We found out that an Oklahoma Highway Patrol trooper had made an inquiry on Tim Mcvey within about 90 minutes of the bombing. And so we had one of the people working on our task force, an ATF agent named Mark Mihalik, contact the Highway Patrol and identify the person whose badge number was in that inquiry. Because when you make an inquiry, you have to list an identifier for yourself as a law enforcement official. And so he found out that that badge number belonged to a trooper named Charlie Hanger. And so once we had Hanger's name, we had someone contact him, and they found out that Hanger had been heading south toward Oklahoma City based on a Highway Patrol dispatcher call for all available troopers to head to Oklahoma City to assist. He had gotten a discontinue. He was about 62 miles north of Oklahoma City, and he turned around in the median on Interstate 35. And as he's starting to head back north, he's passed by this yellow Mercury marquee that's missing its rear license plate. And so he pulls that car over, and the driver gets out of the car, and Hanger has to order him to stay by the door of his car. And so Hanger gets out, tells the guy to back up toward him, and as Mcvey is backing toward him, he notices Mcvey has a bulge under his left jacket. And he reaches out, he grabs it. Mcvey said it's a gun and it's loaded, and Hanger has his gun next to Mcvey's head and says, "So's mine." And he relieved Mcvey of his gun, which was loaded with those rounds that can shoot through an armor vest. And so once he had that gun and a K-bar knife that Mcvey had hidden on his person, he took Mcvey into custody and took him to the Noble County Jail in Perry, Oklahoma. And so our investigator asked Hanger what happened to him. And he said, "I don't know. He may still be in custody, he may not." And so one of our investigators contacted Sheriff Jerry Cook and talked to him, and he said, "Well, Mcvey's in custody, but he's going to be released within probably an hour." And so we put a federal hold on him. And at that point, myself and several other agents got into a helicopter and flew up to Perry. And when we got up there, myself and another agent interviewed the different people that had been in Mcvey's cell. We were asking him questions, has Mcvey said anything? Did he comment about the bombing at all, anything of that nature? And they said no, he was just attentive to the radio that was giving updates on what was going on with the bombing investigation. And then finally, Mcvey was brought in to an office that Sheriff Cook gave us, and I asked Mcvey, I said, do you know why we're here? And he said, that thing in Oklahoma City, I guess. And I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, that bombing. I want an attorney. But one of the really beneficial things of Trooper Hanger taking him into custody was the fact that when they lodged him in the Noble County Jail, they collected all his clothing and put it in paper bags. Well, when we sent that clothing back to the FBI laboratory and they did a chemical analysis test on the clothing, they determined that he was basically the explosive equivalent of a powdered sugar donut. He had PETN all over his clothing. 5 years after the bombing, I brought my wife and children to the dedication ceremony of the memorial. And we could have gone in with Clinton, but we chose to go in with the victims. And I wasn't prepared for the emotional impact that hit me when we walked in there and I saw the people who had lost kids putting stuffed animals and flowers on the little seats. There's big seats for adults and little seats for the kids. And when they went in there and put the stuffed animals and the flowers on the little seats, I couldn't talk. I said, I can't talk, and I just kind of walked on the hill by myself for a few minutes until I kind of composed myself. But it was so sad, you know, what happened with those kids. It is still the defining moment in Oklahoma City. When you try to talk about when something happened, let's see, that was before the bombing, that was after the bombing. It's a measure of time like BC and AD. And, you know, throughout the country, news stories went in different directions, and they didn't keep having that. But in Oklahoma City, they did.
No stone was left unturned to make sure that every clue was found and all the culprits identified. By the time it was over, the Bureau had conducted more than 28,000 interviews, followed some 43,000 investigative leads, amassed 3.5 tons of evidence, and reviewed nearly 1 billion pieces of information. They discovered that a friend of Mcvey's named Terry Nichols helped build the bomb, and another man, Michael Fortier, was also aware of the bomb plot. The following is a short version of events. April 19th, 1995, at 2 a.m. Central Standard Time, a rental truck filled with explosives detonated outside the Alfred P Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. April 19th, 1995. Near Perry, Oklahoma, Army veteran Timothy Mcvey is arrested during a traffic stop for driving a vehicle without a license plate. April 21st, 1995. Mcvey's alleged co-conspirator, Terry Nichols, turns himself in. May 23rd, 1995. The remaining parts of the Murrah building are imploded. August 11th, 1995. Mcvey and Nichols are indicted on murder and conspiracy charges. April 24th, 1997. Mcvey's trial begins in Denver, Colorado. June 2nd, 1997. Mcvey is convicted on 11 counts of murder, conspiracy, and using a weapon of mass destruction. He is later sentenced to death. November 2nd, 1997. Nichols' trial begins in McAlester, Oklahoma. December 23rd, 1997. Nichols is convicted on federal charges of conspiracy and 8 counts of involuntary manslaughter. He is sentenced to life in prison, where he is serving his sentence at the Supermax Federal Prison in Florence, Colorado. June 11th, 2001. Mcvey is executed by lethal injection. He is the first person executed for a federal crime in the United States since 1963. May 26, 2004. Nichols is found guilty in Oklahoma State Court on 161 counts of murder. The jury spends 5 hours deliberating before announcing the verdict. August 9th, 2004. District Judge Stephen Taylor sentences Nichols to 161 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. In the years after the bombing, Mcvey never cooperated with investigators and didn't put up much of a defense in court. But in interviews and correspondence, Mcvey conveyed his profound hatred for the federal government. He thought some government agencies were planning to take away citizens' Second Amendment rights to carry firearms. What tipped him into action, he said, was when nearly 80 members of a religious cult outside Waco, Texas died during an FBI-led assault on their compound. Mcvey even chose his attack on the date of April 19th to coincide with the Waco anniversary. Mcvey and Terry Nichols were part of the militant group called the Patriotic Movement that rejects the government and law enforcement legitimacy. April 19th has now 3 anniversaries. The Patriots' Day, or the American Rebellion of British authority in Lexington in 1775. It is also the day that the Waco compound was raided and 80 members of the Branch Davidian had been killed due to the fire that had begun during the raid. Ruth Schwab was working at the Alfred P Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City on the day that the bombing occurred. The American Experience spoke to her about the bombing and her life after it. Following is a transcript of that interview. We were the government. We weren't the bad guys. We were mothers and fathers and daughters and sons and grandparents who loved our families. But we had a job to do. I was blessed to have the job that I loved. I worked with the Housing Authority to provide housing for underprivileged Native Americans. I usually got to work between 9:20 and 9:30 a.m. I actually got there at 2 minutes to 9 on April 19th. In fact, when I walked in, people were going, "Did my watch stop? It's not 9 o'clock yet. What are you doing here?" I flipped on my computer to warm it up, and that's when I heard this horrific noise. Your brain works in funny ways, and I thought my computer blew up. Then I started to feel like I was falling. It reminded me of a sci-fi movie where they have the black hole and the people are falling down and down and down, and you wonder if you're ever going to hit the ground. I guess when I hit the bottom of the black hole, I actually passed out. I came to rather quickly, but I didn't see anything when I opened my eyes. I could smell smoke, and I could hear terrible sounds. Sounds of a building collapsing, like you hear on TV or in the movies. It's real. You hear popping and everything. I was hearing groaning and soft cries, which haunted me. I couldn't even admit I heard them for quite a while because I had felt like I should have done something. I couldn't. I called out, "Is anyone there?" The sweetest voice I ever heard back. "I'm here, Ruthie. Don't move." It was my friend VZ. I recognized his voice right away. He didn't want me to move because he was afraid I would fall into a sinkhole. He said, "I'll get over to you." He worked his way over and handed me his handkerchief. It'd be like sort of putting a band-aid on a big gash. But it was just his way of trying to calm and comfort me. Then he said, "We've got to get out of here." My children did not come to the hospital. My fiance and my sister did not think it would be good for them to see me because my face was so swollen. My hair was matted with glass and blood and things. They were young. They were 9, 11, 13, 15, and 20. My eyes were in pretty bad shape. I could not see for 3 days, which in itself is a blessing. Apparently, whatever hit them tore the retinas, and my right eye had to be removed. I went home from the hospital on my birthday. When I got there, my house was full of people. It smelled like a funeral home when I walked in. They said it was because there were so many flowers everywhere. Sitting on the couch when I started to see with my left eye. Of course, my children were the first thing I wanted to see. They had gone to their bedrooms and they all came running down because I could see. And I can tell you, you're thrilled. I didn't know if I was going to be able to see them again. People kept calling me saying, "You're going to have to go to Dallas because they have this new way of doing artificial eyes so they look even more real." So when I went back to the doctor and we were scheduling the eye removal, I said, "I don't mean any offense to you, but I've heard there is a method that they do in Dallas," and he started laughing. He said, "We started doing that in Oklahoma City in January. It had been just 4 months since they started doing this procedure. What they do is take a tiny piece of live coral and implant it into the eye tissue. So instead of it just being a big sinkhole, you have something there. As the eye heals the tissues, everything grows in and out of the coral, and that causes the eye to move instead of staying stationary. I can look this way, and my eye looks normal. Or I can turn my eye that way, and the artificial one will follow the real one. It was such a blessing to know I wasn't going to look like Gene Wilder did in some of those movies. Our department lost 47 people. I had been in the building for many, many years. I had friends in other agencies too. At the time, I could not physically go to all the funerals. So I had to grieve for each one separately on my own. That was a very hard thing. It took me many years. I would pass where they used to park, or I'd see someone that looked like them. I used to always see people in malls and think, oh, there's so-and-so. Then I'd think, no, that can't be. Sometimes I'd have to pull my car over to the side of the road and have a little tissue moment. I have changed drastically. Before the bombing, my whole life goal was my career. Children were very important to me, but I wanted to succeed. Afterwards, I realized that is not important. What's important was my kids and my family. It absolutely changed my focus. I grew up in a little suburb of Oklahoma City. If you look at Leave It to Beaver, that's kind of what it was like to grow up here. There was no fear. We often left our doors and windows unlocked and kids played outside in the front yard. Oklahoma City lost a lot of our nativity. I think that was probably one of the saddest things. We can't be naive anymore. We were probably too naive before, but it was such a wonderful place to grow up. This is protected heartland in the middle of the country, and it changed. There are many reports like the one I just read to you from other survivors and rescue workers, witnesses, and family members. The federal building was later raised and a park and memorial were built on that site. The 168 chairs represent the lives taken April 19, 1995. They stand in 9 rows to represent each floors of the building, and each chair bears the names of someone killed on that floor. 19 smaller chairs stand for children. The field is located at the footprint of the Murrah building. The victims, including 3 pregnant women, ranged in the age from 3 months to 73 years. Of the dead, 108 worked for the federal government. The Drug Enforcement Administration, 5. Secret Service, 6. Department of Housing and Urban Development, 35. Department of Agriculture, 7. Customs Office, 2. Department of Transportation and Federal Highway, 11. General Service Administration, 2. Social Security Administration, 40. 8 of the federal government victims were federal law enforcement agents. Those law enforcement agents, 4 were members of the U.S. Secret Service. 2 were members of the U.S. Customs Service. 1 was a member of the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, and 1 was a member of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. 6 of the victims were U.S. military personnel. 2 members of the U.S. Army. 2 members of the U.S. Air Force. 2 members of the U.S. Marine Corps. The rest of the victims were civilians, including 19 children, of whom 15 were in the America's Kids Daycare Center. Until September 11, 2001, Oklahoma City was the largest terror attack on U.S. soil. It still remains the largest domestic attack. As a result of the bombing, the U.S. Congress passed the Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act of 1996, which tightened the standards of habeas corpus in the United States, as well as legislation designed to increase the protection around federal buildings to deter future terrorist attacks. Conspiracy theorists and massacre deniers will tell you that these events didn't happen, that it was all staged so the government, or as the secret elite, can control the narrative. Some have even said that this was to help desensitize us to what happened on 9/11. This is unacceptable. Many people were affected by this. The truth is out there. Research can prove that the events were not fake or staged. To discredit and call this a lie is disrespectful to all parties involved and indirectly involved. We cannot let the conspiracy theorists and massacre deniers get away with claiming that this was all a hoax. Truth is not a hoax. For the next 2 minutes and 48 seconds, please observe a moment of silence as we honor those who fell during this horrible, tragic day.